So how can we help our students succeed in school and in life? By teaching them to knit, of course. To many, this would seem a ridiculous statement to make. How can knitting help students succeed? Of course, it's fun to learn to knit, and it's creative, but it can benefit children in many other ways. Fine motor coordination, reading, math, comprehension, critical thinking, and problem solving. Knitting is also a valuable tool for teaching life lessons, responsibility, the ability to focus and follow through, persistence. It encourages positive social behaviors and teamwork. It encourages children to use available materials and be creative. It improves their personal hygiene, actually. They quickly learn that dirty hands mean dirty yarn and dirty projects. Knitting develops fine motor skills, eye-to-hand coordination, math skills, and what multiple intelligences educational researcher Dr. Howard Gardner calls bodily kinesthetic intelligence. Since both hands hold needles and each hand has its own job, both sides of the brain are engaged and performing an internal rhythmic patterning that underlies the development of language skills, particularly reading and also math. A classroom community of knitters improves in what Dr. Gardner calls interpersonal intelligence. Dr. James Craig, a psychiatrist at a community mental health center in Virginia, says that he strongly supports knitting as an activity for all children, but thinks that it has added benefit for children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. In fact, many with ADHD are actually able to listen better to discussions and if they're also knitting. This may not work for all students. Kat Bordy introduced knitting to her 7th grade humanities students and soon had the whole school knitting. She felt when knitting is integrated into the curriculum, an alert peacefulness arises in the room, opening a window for education. She marveled at the dramatic drop in classroom management and feels that knitting is one of the cheapest, most effective ways to improve educational engagement. The members of Warm Up America, Westwood Elementary's knitting club, Barbara Gruner's goal was to build character by teaching students to knit for service and create afghans to be donated to a person in need. They created patches, 7 by 9 inch patches that were bound together by a parent volunteer. Students became very passionate about their knitting and could be seen everywhere with their yarn and needles in tow. They'd give it their recesses to knit. There are lots of resources for teaching kids to knit. Books, DVDs, checkout sites like Amazon, online videos, which I'll show you a couple in a second, teacher guides like the one Kat Bordy has made for lesson plans, yarn shops. The owners of yarn shops are marvelous about that. Here's a couple of books. Chicks and Sticks, Learning to Knit, Knitting with Kids. Here's a sample video clip.
You're ready to learn your first stitch. It's called the knit stitch. There are 2 basic kinds of knitting methods, the English and the continental method. We're going to use the English method.
Candice. So today I will be showing you guys how to finger knit. For this tutorial, you don't need any needles or anything. All you need are your hands and some yarn.
I have some do's and don'ts for you, just some guidelines from when I've taught children to knit. Do use bulky yarn. It's easier for students to handle. It's easier for them to see their mistakes. Use wooden or bamboo needles. They're not as slippery. Cast on and knit a few rows for the student beforehand to set them up for success. Start with quick and simple projects. Have short sessions. Be sure to have fun. A couple of don'ts along the way. Don't use novelty yarn with multiple strands and bumps and things that make it more difficult for them. Don't use slippery plastic or metal, long needles. The projects fall off all over the floor. Don't teach cast on to younger students before they learn the knit stitch. After all, we want them to succeed. Please don't start with complex projects. As I said before, there are lots of online resources. Craft Yarn Council has wonderful videos, hows and whys, and lesson plans. There's the online tutorial that I showed you a couple clips of, the knitting tutorial and the finger knitting. But most of all, have fun. Happy knitting!